Okay, it's 1625. So we speak about the goat that's sent into the desert, which carries all the sins of the Jewish people, and it's now thrown down the mountainside. And the Torah speaks about the two chatos, two sin offerings, which again, the Kohen Gadol confesses on them, the sins for his family, the sins of the Jewish people. But this has to do with the levels where if someone inadvertently had gone into the Beis Hamikdash or had eaten sacrificial meat when he was contaminated and didn't realize it, or did realize it. So we discussed earlier, we didn't discuss specifically, there's a ritual. Beis Chelev, Hachatos Yakter Mizbecha. The chel of the chatos, you sacrifice on the mizbeach. Which mizbeach? The only thing you sacrifice on the inner mizbeach, the gold altar, was called the incense altar. The incense that was brought twice a day, they would sacrifice, burn on the inner. That was the inner sanctuary. On the outer altar, which was called mizbach ha'olah, with the ritual of the burning of the either the burnt offering or the fats, that was done on the outer mizbeach, and that's what Rashi says. Yakter mizbecha, mizbeach chitzon, on the outer altar. Dilu b'pnimig, but it would be the inner altar. Ksiv or sal olav k'torah zorah v'olah umincha. If one wants to donate incense, but it's not the daily ritual of the incense offering, you cannot bring it there. Or the olah, a burnt offering, mincha, a meal offering. So you sacrifice the fat of the sin offering. There's the communal sin offering on the outer mizbech. The one who sends the goat to the Azazel, down to the jagged mountain, the level of impurity is to such a degree that not only is he contaminated, his clothing are contaminated. And he has washed his flesh, meaning immerse his flesh in water, referring to the mikvah. And then he's permitted to re-enter into the camp. The bull, which was the sin offering, the goat that was a sin offering, Ashehuba is domim l'chapi b'kodesh, which the blood was brought to atone the kodesh. We said earlier, the blood is sprinkled in the Holy of Holies. And on the inner altar, yotze al michutz lamachne. You take the animal itself. The animal is not burnt on the outer altar. V'sorvu b'eish es harosam. You burn in fire the hide, there's besoram, and the flesh of the animal, there's pirsham, and the waste of the animal. And the one who burns them, burns the bull, which is the sin offering, or the goat, that's the communal sin offering, which the blood was sprinkled on the inside, in the Holy of Holies, on the outside of the curtain. Also, he must immerse his clothing in the mikvah, and he must immerse himself in the water. And then he enters into the camp. So what does that indicate? The only reason why, what level of contamination did he engage in that should be contaminated? Normally, when you sprinkle the blood of a sacrifice, any sacrifice, is always on the outer altar. It's never in the Holy of Holies. It's never opposite the curtain on the outer part of the Holies. The communal offerings, the sin offerings of the Yom Kippur, you go into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle. What does that indicate? It indicates that the level of impurity is to such a degree that it contaminated the inner sanctums of holiness, So since the sins of the Jewish people have even penetrated the inner sanctums, to be able to be atoned for them, you have to take the blood and go into the inner sanctums and sprinkle the blood in the Holy of Holies. But that only indicates and reveals the level of impurity that you're engaging with. As a result of that, the person who goes, and that's the reason why this animal, the remains of the animal, its hide, its flesh, cannot be sacrificed on the Mizbeach. Because what it represents is something which has been putrefied because of the level of atonement that it brings about. Therefore, this animal cannot be sacrificed on the Mizbeach. The only thing that goes on the Mizbeach is the blood. Blood, because that's the blood ritual, which is kapora. But the animal normally, which is part of the kapora, the burning of the animal, which is part of the atonement, to bring it to a more complete level, because of what it represents in terms of what it addresses, in terms of sin, it's been putrefied, therefore it doesn't go on the Mizbeach. I mentioned to you the other day, the Rechaim HaKodesh explains that normally a sin offering is not brought in anything if one transgressed deliberately, only inadvertently. So if you remember what he had said in the name of the Arizal, that when the person brings a sin offering, he leans on the offering. That's part of the ritual. It's called smicha. You put your hands by the head of the animal below its neck, by its neck area, and you put all your weight on it. And what does that do? So he explains that the impurity of the sin that the person had engaged in, that impurity, it transfers onto the animal. Because whenever we sin, we create a certain impure force, energy, and that impure force now is transferred onto the animal. So if the person transgressed only inadvertently, the level of impurity is not that severe. Therefore, the animal is not seen to be putrefied. Therefore, you can put it on the Mizbeach, you sacrifice it on the Mizbeach. However, if it was transgression was deliberate, person violated the Shabbos deliberately, he ate on Yom Kippur deliberately, or he engaged in other areas which carry spiritual excision or the death penalty deliberately, the intensity of that force is so overwhelming, when it transfers from the person onto the animal becomes putrefied. Therefore, God says, I don't want that kind of animal on my Mizbeach, not the animal, not its blood. That's the idea. So over here, because the par, the bull, and the goat represent Klal Yisrael, to atone this special level of atonement, God says the only part of that animal which goes on the Mizbeach is the blood. And to indicate how severe that atonement is needed, to what degree, you sprinkle blood 7 times in the inner sanctums, because to that degree, that's what it penetrated. But in terms of the animal itself, its flesh, its hide, and its waste, that's all burnt outside the camp, because it represents that level of impurity. Therefore, the person who engages in it, who burns it, he himself becomes contaminated for that reason, because he's associated with that. The person who carries the Sol Azazel, the goat, which carries all the sins of the Jewish people, because he's associated with that level of overwhelming impurity, he becomes contaminated. He has to immerse himself in the mikvah. His clothing are contaminated. And only then, after he immerses himself, is he permitted to re-enter into the camp. That's the concept. You know, the whole idea of, and this is a problem, you know, people, you know, they say, you know, seeing is believing. They're the laws of family purity, that a woman at a certain time of the month, when she menstruates, she becomes contaminated. The husband's not permitted to be involved with her sexually. And other laws which pertain, if she touches anything which has a certain state of purity, spiritual purity, she contaminates it. So the people, women especially, they're taken aback. They say, why? Is the woman unclean? Because the word which is used, which the Torah uses, is she's tameya. She's impure. Tameya doesn't mean unclean. It means impure. I mean, based on the laws of spiritual purity, she's impure. Because the uterus, when it expels that blood, it creates an impurity. When you come in contact with the dead, there's an impurity. But the person says, look, I bathe, I wash, I'm cleaner than anybody who's gone to a mikveh, to a ritual pool, or immersed himself in a river or in the ocean. Why am I unclean? We're not speaking of physical uncleanliness. Because whatever that is, it has association with a certain degree of nether forces that brings about that impurity. Death brings impurity. Even an animal, the carcass of an animal, you touch it, you become impure. You become contaminated. The contamination comes from the spiritual impurity that it represents. So these particular engagements, whether it's a Solah Zozel, because it carries the sins of the Jewish people, which represents the ultimate level of impurity. The bull and the goat, which atone on Yom Kippur for the Jewish people, which carry that overwhelming level of impurity, the only thing which is qualified to go on the Mizbeach or to be sprinkled, the blood and the fats which are sacrificed, but the animal itself and the hide, because of what it carries, it cannot be sacrificed. Not only that, when you burn it outside of all the camps. It's not burnt in the camp itself. And this is the eternal statute. On the 7th month, on the 10th of the month. Ta'anu es nafshosechem. You must afflict your souls. You must be afflicted. You're not permitted to engage in any creative activity identical to Shabbos. As Shabbos, the 39 creative activities are not permitted. Yom Kippur, the same creative activities are not permitted. The Mishnah tells us in Megillah that the only difference in Yom Kippur and Shabbos is only regard to the liability. But in terms of the prohibition of engaging in creative activity, there's no difference in Yom Kippur and Shabbos. Just as Shabbos, even food-related activities are not permitted. Yom Kippur, food-related activities are not permitted. As in Shabbos, you're not permitted to transport from domain to domain. Yom Kippur, for any reason, you're not permitted to transport from domain to domain. The only difference is, as I said, is the liability if you violate the Yom Kippur. Now, the concept of inui. What is inui? Affliction. So the Gemara asks, does it mean to say that if you're sitting in the shade, you must go in the sun? And to create a level of discomfort? I mean, do you have to create a setting which is painful to you? Is that what it means? You should afflict yourself? So Gemara, based on Psukim, explains that inui, affliction, means specifically in 5 areas of deprivation. To be afflicted, eating, drinking, bathing, anointing oneself, engaging in cohabitation, sexual relations, that you must deny yourself. That's being afflicted. And the Gemara cites verses to indicate that every one of these areas are classified as affliction if you deny those areas. And also wearing leather shoes. Mean if the shoe is made of any other material other than leather, that's called you being afflicted. And once mentioned the name of the Malbim, phenomenal concept. We find that if a man dies childless and he has a wife and leaves over a widow, and there's a surviving brother who's related to him through the paternal side, not maternal side, he has an obligation to perpetuate the name of the deceased. And that's done through yibum. It's called levirate marriage. To marry the widow of the deceased and to engage with her sexually. And when he does, she becomes his wife. The only way you could actually, she becomes your wife if she's a yavama. If she's this widow, it's only through sexual involvement. And that creates the marriage, meaning he takes over the marriage, the relationship of the deceased. What about if the surviving brother says, I'm not interested? I don't want to perform levirate marriage. The woman, because she is the widow of a man who died childless, she needs a release. What is the release? The release is called chalitza. Chalitza. Now, normally, one sister-in-law is considered a forbidden relationship. It's an incestuous relationship. Person is married to a woman, divorces his wife, or he dies and he has children, and the brother marries that woman, it carries the liability of koris. If a child is conceived, that child is a mamzer, it's considered illegitimate. However, in the context where the widow is the widow of a man who had no children, not only is it a permitted relationship, there's an obligation to perform levirate marriage, and the child, which is normally a mamzer, illegitimate, the child is a kosher Jew. For the sake of perpetuating the name of the deceased. But if a man should say, the surviving brother says, I'm not interested, the only way she's permitted to remarry, she has to have this release. Similar to a married woman is a get. The widow of this person needs a chalitza. What's chalitza? Torah describes what chalitza is. She goes to the court and she tells the court that my brother-in-law does not want to perform levirate marriage. So the court says to the woman, take off the right shoe of your brother-in-law, which is made of leather. A shoe is made of leather. Remove the leather shoe from his right foot and spit in his presence. She spits in his presence and she declares to the Bezdin, Mein Yabmi. My brother refuses to perform levirate marriage, and the court responds, Beis chalutza now, Beis chalutza now. This house has been terminated through this ritual, and she's free to remarry. So the Malbim over there asks, what is this whole concept of the removal of the leather shoe? That the sister-in-law, the widow, removes the leather shoe if he doesn't want to perform levirate marriage. So he cites the Gemara Shabbos. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says that it's worthwhile for a person to sell all his possessions to buy shoes, to buy leather shoes, and not to walk barefoot. To wear leather shoes. That's how it's important to wear shoes. So he goes to accept, why is that? Why is Rabbi Yochanan saying this? So he explains, why are shoes made of leather? It's because it's the most durable type of material, the hide of an animal. Like they say, I remember when I grew up, footballs are made of pigskin, because pigskin is it's the toughest leather, right? So he said, maybe wear shoes. If it's durability, you should wear, pigskin shoes. What does leather represent? So he goes to explain, why did God create the world? God created the world for the human being. The human being is the center of the universe. Everything which was created to accommodate the human being. Whether it's the animal kingdom, whether it's the plant, whatever it is, everything is to accommodate the needs of the human being. When the person takes the hide of an animal and fashions it into a shoe, it's a statement. It's a declaration. What's the declaration? You trample on the animal. You're superior to the animal. To the degree that the leather, the hide of the animal, you're stepping on it. You're dominating the animal. Meaning a human being is not an intellectual animal. but rather a human being is a spiritual being who functions within a physical context. So that is the representation. That's the declaration of wearing shoes. Who are you? That identifies who you are. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says, that one, even if he has to sell his assets to buy a pair of leather shoes, because that declaration is a declaration to identify who you are in terms of your value and your purpose in existence, that you are the center of existence. So this whole concept of people, remembering many years ago, on the side, when I first came to New York, and I davened in a certain shul on the Upper East Side, and I had a certain role in the shul, in that synagogue. So if I'd see a person walking in, didn't wear tefillin, I'd say, better, would you want a pair of tefillin? And I'd offer a pair of tefillin. If he had to be shown how to put them on, I'd have somebody instruct him how to put on the tefillin. So one person walks into shul, and I say, would you want to put on a pair of tefillin? He says, I would, but only if it's made of vinyl. If it's made of leather, I can't wear the tefillin. I said, why can't you wear the tefillin? He says, because I'm a vegetarian. And therefore, if it's made of leather, I can't wear it. I was never exposed to that level of vegetarian, that he needs a vinyl pair of tefillin. You understand? The behemoth, I'm using the word behemoth, is the behemoth. This guy's also a behemoth. He seems as though he's no better than the animal. Therefore, where does he have a right to kill the animal to benefit from its hide? But Rabbi Yochanan says that is why it's so important to wear the shoes which are leather, because it's a declaration of who you are. So the Malbim explains, normally a sister-in-law is an incestuous relationship. The Torah says, and normally a child is conceived from that relationship, the child is a mamzer, is illegitimate. But for the sake of perpetuating the name of the deceased, the Torah says, in this situation, this setting, it's permitted. Not only is it permitted, it's a mitzvah. The child is a legitimate child. So the question is, the Torah, through the laws which pertain to this situation, it shows how important it is. So why aren't you performing levirate marriage? Why are you giving the release rather than levirate marriage? The answer is, the person says, she's not my cup of tea. She's not my cup of tea. So the Torah says, well, God's willing to turn the world upside down, to permit the woman to classify this child as a legitimate child. And you're telling me she's not a cup of tea. You know what the answer is? You know better than the animal. And therefore, the Torah says, what is the ritual of the release? Take the leather shoe off his right foot. He is no better than the animal. He has no right to demonstrate that he tramples the animal because he's really on par with the animal itself. That's the Malbim. That's the Malbim. What is Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is a day of atonement. It's a day of tshuva. The mitzvah is tshuva. What is tshuva? Why does a person normally sin on Yom Kippur? Sin throughout the year? Because a person feels he has a right. It's the ego. It's who I am. Who are you? God says you are the essence of creation. Everything revolves around you. So the person feels that he has that innate value, he takes liberties. He crosses lines because that's part of the psyche of a human being. But what's essential to tshuva? To recognize that God is the one who makes the decisions, what you're permitted not. And it's only to that degree. And these liberties, which allowed you to sin, you never had a right to take those liberties. Therefore, in Yom Kippur, we don't wear shoes. We don't wear shoes. There's no outward demonstration of ego. No eating, no drinking, all the basic amenities that you need to function. Normally, God takes them away from us. That's being afflicted. And in that afflicted state, we do tshuva. And that is the atonement. Because we come to a level of realization, of negation, of humility, which allows us to fully appreciate the value of who we really are, that we're not physical beings, but we're spiritual beings in a physical context. Therefore, the shoes are removed. And that is the deprivation, because normally God allows that to demonstrate that. But it's a little bit of an ego stroking, which brings the sin, causes sin. Therefore, in Yom Kippur, that you must remove to afflict yourself to deny yourself that, to be able to internalize the reality of who you really are.